Hello friends, and welcome back to Figure Study, where we're looking at something that was a bit of a surprise in that this is a thing I didn't know existed until a few days ago, and then I saw it existed and I really wanted it, and I ordered it off the Gmarket, and now I have it, and it's really interesting. This is Miniforce Animaltron Jawscop. Yeah, I don't know much else about it other than now we've got this go-on-jure looking vehicle with a face. It's really kind of silly. But that silliness is kind of the reason why I love this, and I'll get to that more in the robot mode. But yeah, it's a shark car. And it's actually kind of interesting for what it is. You, of course, have the shark face with the very prominent shark eyes and teeth. That's not actually what a shark's eye looks like because, you know, they don't have corneas. They're just big black voids. But this is also a car, so it's not exactly going for accuracy, right? What's interesting about this, though, is they actually put a lot of detail and thought into this, because like this is sculpted. This isn't just like a sticker or a tampograph. This is sculpting all along here for the eyebrow and the eye and the cornea and the pupil and all that, and it's painted separately. So that is a surprising amount of effort that they put into just the eyes for this kind of goofy looking alt mode. And I really like that. And then further pushing the shark motif is the fact that it is shaped vaguely like a shark. You've got the pectoral fins on the sides, you've got the dorsal fin on top, you've got the tail fin. It kind of also has a vague shape of a shark with the bulk being up here and it kind of tapers off a little bit towards the back. And then if you look at this light blue section here, it almost makes it look like there is a robot shark kind of nestled inside the car with its eyes poking out. Because like this bit along here is much more of a shark shape. And that's also where the dorsal fin and the tail are connected. So yeah, it's a really interesting design. But I do like it. It's goofy, but I like it. And I think it's neat how they have these gold vents here that are also where, like vaguely where the gills would be. So it kind of gives that impression. The sections along top here I think are supposed to be windows. And I think that kind of works, though the slope makes it like seem like it'd be difficult to see out of. There are these wheels that have the little shark icon on them. They're also nicely painted in silver around the rims. And then we've got the white on the dorsal fins, some more white lines back here, some more detailing back here. It's a really kind of nicely put together vehicle mode, which is really only made goofy by the cartoony shark face. The only thing that I think would have been nice, like they've got these bits in translucent, this really nice translucent turquoise, which looks really good. But I do think it kind of would have been nice if they painted the taillights or possibly the exhaust pipes in the back, because they're there. You can see they're molded in there, but they're not actually painted or separated out or anything like that. I mean, I know it's not a high priority because this is the back of the admittedly silly looking vehicle mode, but it would have been nice. But then I can do that myself too. Also, like these details back here, I feel like if these little circular bits, or possibly the inside, maybe the inside of this section was painted in, that would make it stand out a little bit more. Yeah, it's a silly looking vehicle mode that I actually do appreciate. And as you might think or expect or be curious about, you can open the cartoony shark mouth. You can lower the lower jaw. You can open that up, though it does interrupt the line for the wheel well, but you can also lift up the upper jaw. So if you wanted to have it look like the shark car is getting ready to chomp on stuff, you could do that. You could probably bring this down a little bit. Yeah, like that's about as far down as you can bring the lower jaw and still have this roll, but I think that works pretty well. And yeah, Jawscop's car mode is strange, but I do like it. And I like the colors here too. The white highlights in a few places, and then this predominantly kind of a slightly bluish gray in the darker tones, and then the much brighter, almost sky blue for the lighter tones. It's a nice separation, and it's a nice color palette. Now let's get this silly looking thing back a little ways so we can do some size comparisons. So here he is with the standard Lux Squad, and I know I don't cover Miniforce stuff on the channel that often, barely ever, but it is more or less in line with other Korean transforming robot lines. So like Tobots, Helocarbots, that kind of thing. So yeah, as you would probably expect, Jawscop is rather large compared to a standard deluxe. Here he is with a classic style Helocarbot, which is the bigger ones, and you can see that it's actually, at least as far as vehicle mode mass goes, it's pretty much on par with an older Helocarbot. Here he is with a slightly newer Carbot, which is a bit smaller, so that actually does make Jawscop a little bit bigger. Here he is with a more classic Tobot, and I feel like Terracle's a little bit chunkier and beefier here, but Terracle's also a bit of a beast compared to other older Tobots. Here he is with a more contemporary Tobot, specifically a Tobot V figure, Wild Chief. And here he is with the Duck Tank. Alright, that is it for Jawscop's rather silly looking vehicle mode. It's fun. I like the design here. I think there is some really nifty stuff going on here, but it is silly. Just the big cartoony shark face is a lot. But I do think for what it is pretty neat. As you'd expect, this isn't the only thing that Jawscop does, but what you might not expect is that Jawscop's robot mode, it's quite possibly one of the coolest robot modes I've seen in a toy in quite some time, if you can believe that, coming from this. But yes, so let's get to that. So first thing I want to do is disconnect these things from the back. So I want to angle these out and swing them around, and there are these tabs here that tab in loosely right in this tail section back here. They don't really peg in very solidly, but they hold in place enough. So pull those out, and these will hinge down and just kind of rest against the side here with the tires. Now I want to fold back what will become the hands, just to get them out of the way. I want to separate the forearms here, and those will swing down on these little ratchet joints. And now I want to move these bits here. These attach on either side, and you kind of have to move them because they get in the way of these panels on the side that you got to fold down. So just want to disconnect it, and you can see where it clips in right there. So just disconnect it and lean it out a bit so that you can fold this down. And same deal over here. And it pegs in right about here. So you want to unpeg it and swing it down and back so that everything's kind of like this. Now with that swung out of the way, can pull here to extend the torso, or what will become the torso. Get the tail a little bit out of the way here and bring down the arms. The arms are on a double hinge, so wiggle those down, and the upper hinge is very, very stiff. You can kind of see there's a hinge there and then another hinge up there, so you want to hinge that down. I'll keep the arms like this for now, work on the legs next. So, I want to pull back the jaws, the lower jaw, to get that out of the way, pull up the upper jaw and fold that all the way back. Then grab this entire upper section here and pull it down, and it'll hinge all the way down like that, straighten out to make legs. And fold up the feet, and split the legs, and then these bits here that were the dorsal fin flip around and face forward, and that gives you enough room to bring the upper jaw section back down, and that'll just kind of rest against the back of the leg. It would be nice if it clipped in place somewhere, but it just kind of rests. And with that done, you can bring the lower jaw sections back down. And to finish off the upper body, I want to rotate the shoulders down, raise the tail up because it's actually on a double hinge system here. So raise that up and rotate this entire, there's this disc section here that the head sits on. You want to rotate that entire thing around. Then rotate the tail chunk itself around so that it's facing this way, and this can go back. Fold the arms forward and can close the fists. And then these panels here will fold out slightly so they just kind of sit out parallel to the body like that, and then the tail kind of rests down between them. And there we go. There we have Miniforce Animaltron Jawscop in robot mode, and this is a where does this toy get off having a robot mode that looks this cool when its vehicle mode looked that silly? Honestly, this is kind of bonkers. The proportions are shockingly well done. They've got kind of like a super robot vibe with the kind of beefier chest and very long legs. Not as cartoonishly long as I've seen on some other Miniforce figures lately, but definitely a bit longer than they probably need to be. But this is just such a cool design. I love this. And the kibble is surprisingly manageable. Like, there's these bits on the back which are a little bit meh. But other than that, like, the tail doesn't really get in the way. The jaw pieces, either the top or bottom, don't really get in the way. And they kind of create this interesting layering effect down the back of the leg. The wheel shoulder pods actually look kind of cool. And I like how these fins that were on the back end up folding down onto the shoulders to kind of continue that shark pectoral look without being super overt about it. Continuing the shark motif, you also get a little bit of a shark fin on the back of the hands, and then the head, which we'll see more in a bit, that also has a little bit of a shark look with like pectoral fins and dorsal fin kind of layout. But man, this robot looks so freaking cool. I love the kind of layered armor effect that they've got going on here, particularly in the chest, and the colors are really nice. Like, it was primarily this dark grayish blue, bluish gray, whatever you want to call it, and then some of that light blue and like a little bit of white, and now you've got much more white. The darker grayish blue, bluish gray is spread out more. The extremely light blue is pretty much just left to the feet, and a little bit you can see sticking out over the back. And now you've got this orange that comes in a few places to really kind of set off some of these accents, like in the shins, the waist, the torso, and the very top of the head. And just look at this thing. This is an amazing robot design, and it comes from a vehicle that looks like this. I am just blown away by this. I love that sort of contrast between having a kind of silly looking alt mode and an amazing looking robot. There's just something super entertaining about how it kind of catches you off guard with that. And this thing is just great. Like, I love a lot of the angles that they added for the robot mode. The kind of, again, layering effect that they did in a few places. Like, the torso looks so good. I love this whole design and like that kind of translucent blue chest section thing, and it just looks so cool. And there's some really nice color separation too, like the dark grays and the whites and the blacks and everything. It works out really, really well. And these little translucent turquoisey bits that we saw a little bit of in the vehicle mode are much more prominent now because they're right in the front of the shoulders, but they also look cool because they're like vents right there in the front of the shoulders. And this is just, man, I love this design. It looks extremely sleek and fast because of all the sharp angles that are like sort of pointing forward in the chest and head. It all kind of comes together to a point. Even the shoulders kind of create this line that comes in this way, and everything's kind of coming in this way. And yeah, this is an amazing mech design. I know I've said that so many times, but it really is. The head is also extremely cool. It's separated out really nicely with the white, the dark blue, and a little bit of that orange on top, a little bit of black for the venting. You can just kind of make out the orange for the eyes underneath that really big protrusion over the head, but it looks cool. And again, I like the shape and how it kind of evokes the shark shape again, but not in a cartoony way. It's the kind of thing where if you didn't know he turned into a shark car, it may not necessarily read as a shark, but it totally is, with, again, the pectoral fins and the dorsal fin on top. I did do some modification on this guy. I will say, out of the box, the head does not turn. The only way you can turn the head is to get the tail out of the way and use that disc thing that the head is attached to. It's fine for what it is, but that's not really enough for me, so I ended up opening the guy up. What you're seeing now is what this guy looked like when I did open him up. I had to take the torso apart to take that head disc neck thing out and then disassemble that, because the head has two pegs on it that sit inside that neck ring. But by very, very slowly and steadily, this took like over an hour of work, I just went in and very slowly carved away and filed away and shaved it down little by little. I went in and carved out those two peg holes in the neck piece, so now it's one big hole. Then I had to go in and shave away some of the back of the robot head because it's essentially designed to sit flush with the back of that neck brace piece. And then the last thing I had to do was there's this turquoisey translucent blue piece that sits inside the collar right in front of the head. And that is, there's a nub that keeps it in place. I had to shave down the nub so that it was no longer sticking. Because that is that being wedged between the nub and the face is what keeps it in place, I had to glue it to the front of the face. Once all that shaving and filing and gluing was done, I put the head back in place and reattached that disc that you see that sits on the bottom, and then put the whole assembly back together. And the end result is now I can turn the head without having to turn the entire disc. It's not necessarily ideal. I probably could have just taken that blue piece out or possibly found a way to make it so that the blue piece doesn't have to be glued to the face, because it's not technically part of the face, I don't think, as per the design. But I love that I can turn the head now without having to turn the entire assembly, because that was just kind of annoying. You can't turn the head out of the box, so you will have to mod it if you want to do that. But as for the other articulation, it's actually pretty good on this guy. You've got some outward motion, which can use both of these joints that were used in the transformation, so you can go out a fair bit. I'm actually going to move this just to get it out of the way. Yeah, you can go out quite a bit. As we saw with the transformation, the arms can rotate. This stuff does get in the way, but if you want, if you bring the tail up like this, you can then pull these pieces back. And now they sit, things go way back now, so you've got, this guy kind of has some kibble sticking out the back, but it cleans up the silhouette from the front and clears up space for the arms. So now you can go in and out and turn a lot easier. Unfortunately, there is no bicep rotation on this guy. You do not get it. And that is the one failing, I think, with this design. I mean, there's really not much they could have done to put it in there, I don't think, but that is a little disappointing. A bicep swivel would have been really nice. Or something to even approximate it, but you don't get butterfly motion or anything like that. You do get elbows though. And the elbows can go almost 90 degrees. Not quite, but almost. It can go back almost 90 degrees too for the transformation. This does do the thing where the elbow is really high up on the arm, but because the shoulders are so bulky, I feel like it's not as immediately noticeable because you're not really looking at the biceps anyway, because they're kind of hidden by massive shoulder chunks. The wrists don't rotate, but they do go in and out for the transformation, and then you can also open and close the fingers for the transformation. There is no waist swivel, which they totally could have put waist swivel in here. There is room, I think, but it's not a make or break thing, I don't think. The legs can go forward about that far, maybe a little further if you really want to push it. If you go out a bit, yeah. They can go back until stuff starts clashing. I guess if we move this out of the way, then you can go back a little further. As you probably imagine, you can get in and out, and then this starts clashing into the pelvis piece here, but you can go out a little bit further if you rotate things. Speaking of, you do get a thigh swivel, and it can go all the way around, but because of the geometry going on here, it's a bit tricky to get it to do that. The thigh swivels out of the box were a bit loose, so I ended up having to go in with some floor polish. And then you also get knees, and the knees require a little bit of work because you've got this lower jaw in the way, so you kind of have to bend the lower jaw out of the way, and then you've got two potential knee joints, one up here and one down here. So the upper knee joint can go back about that far. If you use the lower knee joint, go back about that far. Or you can use them in conjunction, and it doesn't really get you any extra bend. All told, you get slightly under 90 degrees of knee bend, which, considering that this is, a Miniforce toy, I think that's fine. And then for the feet, you don't get any tilt or anything like that, but you can kind of push the foot up a little bit or point it down to get yourself a little bit of toe point, but it's not really necessary. So yeah, the articulation on Jawscop is actually pretty decent. especially now that he can turn his head. But as I said, that's not something that you can do out of the box. But even with that limited articulation, even if he couldn't turn his head, but I am glad he can turn his head now, he just looks so freaking cool. Man, this robot mode is awesome. Anyway, I'm sure it's no surprise that his robot mode is quite a bit bigger than a standard deluxe, but this guy expands out into a surprisingly tall robot, even considering all of that. Like, he's a bit taller than I was expecting. Not like massively taller, but I was just kind of thinking he would be more in line with, say, like a more modern Tobot V figure or something like that, but he's actually more like classic Tobot height. Speaking of more classic Hello Carbot style figures and Tobot style figures and whatnot, here he is next to Ponymeister, and he's actually taller than Ponymeister, so I take it back. He's not as tall as an old Hello Carbot figure, he's actually taller. So of course, by extension, he is also a fair bit taller than a slightly more contemporary Hello Carbot figure. He still doesn't quite compare to the absolute unit that is Terrical, but he's height-wise pretty close. Like, the plastic basically stops in the same place. Terrical is taller at the head and is heavier and denser, all things considered, but still, Jawscop is pretty friggin' big. So of course he's also a lot bigger than Tobot V Wild Chief, and this is a tough thing, because I adore Wild Chief. The Jawscop is also really, really cool. The Wild Chief has better articulation. Jawscop has a design it just punches its way right into my heart. I don't know which of these I like better, but I guess I don't technically have to decide. And finally, here he is with the duck tank. And that is gonna do it for Miniforce Animaltron Jawscop. This is such a cool figure. I'm so glad I got this. I said it before, I will say it again. I love how you've got this somewhat silly looking alt mode. It still looks kind of neat in its own right, but it is kind of silly because of the cartoon face. But then you end up with this absolutely stunningly cool robot mode. And I just love that kind of conflicting aesthetic that they've got going in each mode. And the articulation on this guy is way better than I expected. It's really just the lack of bicep swivels that are the big disappointment here. And yeah, I did have to spend about like an hour or two modifying him so he could turn his head, but I don't mind doing that. And you can kind of game it with the moving the tail thing if you want to do that instead. Point is, this figure's incredible and I'm very glad I got it. But that is enough of my rambling. What do you all think of Miniforce Animaltron Jawscop? Whatever your thoughts, feel free to chime in down below. I always enjoy hearing from you all. If you enjoyed this video or any of the other videos that I do and you want to support the channel outside of watching the videos in the first place, there is also a Patreon, which there is a link in the description, and there will also be something at the end card. It's just a single tier that is $1. It supports the channel and will get you early access to new videos, access to the occasional behind-the-scenes posts that I make, and eventually, when I get enough patrons, I'm going to start doing polls again, so you can have a little bit of a say in what happens with the channel. But aside from all of that, thank you everybody so much for watching, and remember, art is more than meets the eye.